Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fan Friction. I'm your host, Jack Shipley. We have a very special show for you today. I'm going to get right into it. Let me introduce who's here to fight. Our first guest is the director of content for Geek Pulse Radio Network and a good friend of the show. Please welcome back to our stage, Jonathan Youngblood.
How's it going, everybody? It is so nice to be back in the ring again. I am psyched for this fight, and hopefully it'll be entertaining.
I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming back. Our second guest reviews movies on his YouTube channel of the same name, of his name, and creates all the title cards for our show. So thank you again for doing that. Please welcome back Garrett McDowell.
Hello, everyone. I'm terrified to be here.
I'm terrified, and I'm not even fighting today. And finally, she is the co-host of the Odd Shape channel and our current Fan Friction champion. Please welcome back Kimber Barrett.
Hey guys, I'm excited to do this one. Me and Jonathan and Garrett, I'm excited to fight with you as well.
This is going to be a great show. Let me introduce real quick our Checker Chair. Today they host the BFF right here on TUFF, which airs tonight after our show, as well as their own channel, Geek to My Nerd on YouTube. Please welcome back to the Checker Chair, Ashley and Joe Davis.
Hello. Hey everyone, we're excited to be here and also nervous. I don't know why, but you know, just always nervous.
Perpetual state.
And as always, of course, you want to follow along on This Is Tough on Twitter so that they can read your tweets during the show. And you may have noticed in the bottom, there is a special guest. He's from Australia. His name is Sam Catlin. Which you can't hear. There we go. Say something again, Sam. I'm sorry.
I said that's Samuel to you.
So he's back. He's from Australia. I don't know why he would be significant, but it might be because of our final guest, guys. She is the correspondent with Fandango, host on Filmstruck, co-admin on an amazing new Facebook channel. It's called, it's a group rather, called We Rally, and she's the author of a best-selling book. It's this book, Backwards and in Heels. Her name is the Red Fury, Alicia Malone.
Oh, you mean this book? I'm just going to hold it up the entire time. Thank you guys so much for having me. This is so fun, and I'm really looking forward to hearing these arguments. It's like being back on Movie Fight, so I'm excited.
It's going to be an interesting show. People, you probably don't know what's going on, so let me tell you what's happening. Alicia's going to be guest judging today because in 2 weeks we have a very special guest coming to our show. We'll tell you about it at the end, so stay tuned. And the fighters today are fighting for a chance to fight on that show. But because the stakes are so high, I really didn't feel comfortable judging, and you know, sometimes they make fun of me for my answers. So I picked a professional to come to the show to tell you guys that your answers are right. So Alicia's here to judge today. It will not be me. So with that, no further ado, we're going to get right into it and go into our first speed round. Alicia, here's how it works. I'm going to read you 5 categories. You're going to pick one, and that'll be their speed round question. They'll have all 3 of the fighters will be battling it out in the speed round, and they'll have 30 seconds and 20 seconds to answer, and then we'll pick it just like normal. And then that will choose, the person who wins will choose the order to who goes first in round 1. So here are the categories I have chosen for today. We have Holiday Brouhaha. Does it, though? Monster Mash, Lady Rabbit Ears, and Ragnarok of Ages.
Oh, I like... Does it, though?
Does it, though? Awesome. Okay, so today's first speed round question is, what movie that everyone says holds up doesn't really?
West Side Story.
All right, I heard West Side Story first. Garrett, I didn't hear yours.
Hocus Pocus. You heard it here, guys. Hot takes everywhere.
All right, and Kimber.
Man.
Take your time. I'm writing people's names down. This is a tough one. Every question today is going to be a little bit difficult. This could almost be its own question. Brian Hurst inspired this question on Twitter. That's why we picked it. It's tough when you're under lights. This is a big round.
It is real tough.
So Alicia, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, this is the point where my mind just goes blank. Anytime I was in the speed round and I had to think of something, I'm like, I can't think of anything.
The obvious answer here is Battle Los Angeles, Jack.
Oh, no, see, well, I knew you were going to bring that up. When I was Jonathan and I were in fan fights on Screen Junkies, and when we were in that fight, the question was best movie take place in Los Angeles, and he said La La Land immediately, and then just everything wiped from my head. And the only one that would come in was Battle Los Angeles. And I can't pick Battle Los Angeles. It's a terrible movie, and it was just, I mean, Terminator 2. There's so many good movies that take place.
I know, but sometimes you just go blank.
Nothing would come.
Yeah, I
to
got
me.
nothing. I'm sorry.
It's okay, Kimber. What we'll do then is we'll just have a two-person fight. We'll do the 20 and 10. One of you guys will win the first point and get to choose who goes first in round one. I heard Jonathan first, West Side Story. Whenever you're ready, time will start. Oh, wait, I don't have my bell. There it is. I'm making noise. I forgot to get my bell. Go for it. 20 seconds whenever you're ready.
West Side Story is largely considered one of the best musicals ever made, but at the same time, when you look at it from modern perspectives, the racial and the sexist stereotypes that permeate the entire movie, honestly, the very bad choreography throughout the movie, the mundane music, everything about it just breathes mediocrity. West Side Story does not hold up on any level, from production to characterization.
Time. All right. Garrett, whenever you're ready.
Hocus Pocus is one of those films that everybody watches every year, but it is so cheesy and hokey, and not even to the point where it's fun. The story doesn't make any sense, whereas West Side Story, you actually have this music that has permeated decades. Leonard Bernstein's score is fabulous. The lyrics to these songs are great. It does have some stereotypes, but it still holds up as a musical, and it's one of those films.
Time. All right. Jonathan, you have, what did we say, 20 and 10?
Can you restate the question quick?
I sure can. It's what movie that everyone says holds up doesn't.
Here's the thing. Everyone doesn't say Hocus Pocus holds up. Hocus Pocus is very much so tied to the decade that it came from. It's known for being crazy and over the top and cheesy, and everything that you said that was why it doesn't hold up.
Time. Garrett.
Earlier this year, I stated that Hocus Pocus was a bad movie, and I thought that I said something sacrilegious. Everybody attacked me. Everyone loves that movie, and I'm like one of the only people who doesn't. Whereas West Side Story, you have an Oscar winner.
Time. All right.
Ooh.
Alicia Malone.
Alrighty. Well, both really strong arguments, and I think you both took down each other's arguments pretty well. But I have to go with Jonathan, because I thought you made a compelling argument that West Side Story has racist and sexist problems. The choreography is cheesy. When you're a jet, you're a jet. And then I thought you also made the point that Hocus Pocus, everyone knows it's cheesy, but we love it still.
Awesome. Good job. Jonathan, you get point number one.
I've won my 1 point for the show. I'm good. Okay.
Well, that also means you get to choose the order that you want to go in for round one. Jonathan, who should go first, second, and third?
Let's go. Let's start with the champ, Garrett, then me.
Okay. And Jonathan. All right. So round one, guys, backwards and in heels. It's a close-up look at women in the film industry and the struggles they have faced to establish their place in film history. So we wanted to know what woman working in any aspect of film on or before 1960 had the greatest impact on cinema as we know it today. So Kimber, you are going to go first.
Yes, I chose a screenwriter and editor who worked behind the scenes, not in the spotlight at all, really, for most of her career, but helped contribute to the career of a massive filmmaker who everybody knows, as well as having her own work outside of his. So I went with Alma Revel, who was married to Alfred Hitchcock.
All right. And then Garrett, you're second.
I went with Mary Pickford, the silent film star, a.k.a. the most powerful, bar none, woman to have ever worked in Hollywood. It is not even a contest.
Although we're going to make it a contest today because we have to have a show.
Oh, of course, of course.
And Jonathan.
My pick is a woman who is constantly referred to as the only working female director of her time in Hollywood. My pick is Dorothy Arzner.
All right, guys, fight it out. And Alicia, I turn control over the round to you.
Okay.
I picked Mary Pickford because she essentially sets the frame for what we consider the modern day movie star. She also revolutionized a lot about what we consider to be acting and how it's done. She was so powerful and so headstrong in the way that she negotiated for terms for salary and things like that, to the point where when she was 24 was making well over $1 million a year, which was more than anyone, male or female. She was so powerful and trailblazing for her time, and that permeates the decades. No one has even come close to being as influential in the film industry as she was, which is really unfortunate because she was a silent film star, and nobody even comes close to being as big as she is.
I thought it was really important to not pick an actress in this round because there have always been actresses in film who made lots of money and who were popular and beautiful. I thought it was important to pick somebody who was working behind the scenes because women nowadays are still dealing with the issues. Somebody like Alma was breaking ground for people who are making movies, big female directors like Wonder Woman and stuff nowadays. She was doing that. Wonder Woman's like considered anomaly almost with this female director, and I think that's absurd because you have somebody like Alma who's been making movies since the 20s.
But don't understand what Mary Pickford did. Mary Pickford also founded the United Artists with Douglas Fairbanks and Charlie Chaplin, and she also was one of the few women in the 36 members of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts, which again led to the Oscars, one of the founding members of the Oscars. To say she was just a big star is really undercutting how much she changed the film industry.
I definitely don't want to downplay Mary Pickford's role in Hollywood. She definitely did blaze a lot of paths for a lot of women in terms of acting. But what I'm going to say about Dorothy Arzner is that you have someone here who started from the very bottom, started as a film cutter, worked her way up to being, like I said, one of the only working female director of her time. Along with that, she was able to debut a lot of actors from the silent film to the spoken film era. She was able to make that transition happen. Dorothy Arzner is also known as being one of the first major LGBTQ figures in cinema, paving the way for other outspokenly out members of Hollywood being able to work behind the scenes in an era that was very homophobic and was along with being very sexist. When I picked Dorothy Arzner, I didn't really go back to my film knowledge. I went back to my study of feminist film theory in college, which Dorothy Arzner was one of the predominant first figures to be studied, starting with Claire Johnston in the 70s, basically making feminism as a very valid form of film criticism actually a possibility, and also paved the way for queer theory within cinema to be able to be a valid topic of study. So Dorothy Arzner across the board is able to stand above and beyond anybody else.
I agree, and I think I more admire Dorothy Arzner, but I wouldn't say that in her time when she was alive, unfortunately, she's one of those people that was ahead of her time, meaning she did a lot of radically different things, but they didn't really change things while she was alive, and it wasn't until about the 70s that her name started to come up again. So when she was alive, I don't think that she was really making ripples while she was still alive.
I think it's fairly normal for women in entertainment to have their accomplishments downplayed.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you bring up that she had been working as a film cutter and all that, because Alma Revel did the same exact thing. She had been working behind the scenes since she was 15 years old. And this question is really about whose influence is felt today. And I think that that's easily Alma because of the work that she did with Hitchcock. She was single-handedly involved with some of the biggest decisions that we notice in his films today. Like, she was the editor who caught that Janet Leigh was breathing after her death scene and cut that out of the movie. She was the person who talked him into using music in the shower. He wanted to have blank sound, just screaming, and the composer of the movie had this beautiful soundtrack, and she liked it, and she talked him into listening to it. Like, this man didn't listen to anybody, but he listened to Alma, and that wasn't because it was his wife. It was because he absolutely respected her. If anything, I think that she probably became his wife because of the respect that he had for her work.
My qualm that I have with Alma is she was very famously so influential on Hitch, but to the point where it's notable that Alfred Hitchcock kind of had a type when he would go towards these women, and like people like Tippi Hedren and things like that. And it's been well documented that some of these women reached out to her and she really didn't do much to help them. So like when you have these really trailblazing, important women like these, it's just hard for me to have Alma in this running as well, because she wasn't necessarily like the perfect person, and she did help Alfred Hitchcock with
her personal life, though, Garrett. It's about her work.
Well,
you know, what happened
here's
her husband and
I want
actresses had nothing to do with her work.
In order to navigate the rather touchy waters of the Tippi Hedren situation, on one hand, it is I definitely don't want to act as if Elma Revel could have single-handedly stopped someone as awful as Alfred Hitchcock from doing what he did to so many people. However, what I will say is that in the first-hand accounts that you do read of actors like Tippi Hedren approaching Alma Revel, it is always coinciding with people saying that someone with the influence and with the power within Hollywood and within the life of her relationship with Alfred Hitchcock should have said or done something. I would definitely say that that is not to speak against her prowess within cinema.
Absolutely not.
But
that's good. This question is about her prowess in cinema. I wish that I didn't have to have this conversation so many times, because I am a female working artist. Our relationships have nothing to do with our work. This question is about our work. So wasting time talking about her relationship with Alfred Hitchcock is ridiculous to me. It seems like you're deflecting.
The problem is her entire legacy is based on her relationship with Alfred Hitchcock.
Exactly. Yeah, that's her career. Like, that's how she started kind of in the shadow of Hitch and then built herself up. Her relationship is her career.
But I want to walk away from the negativity of this aspect, because this is a touchy subject, and I'd rather not bog down the show with a subject that's going to.
You're not as well, but you both did.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, what do you think about Mary Pickford?
Mary Pickford is a phenomenal figure, but one thing I will say against Mary Pickford, I mean, she's known for winning her first Academy Award for Coquette, something that is widely known today as one of the most undeserving Oscar wins of all time, largely accomplished by hosting dinner parties and buying off Oscar votes and basically leveraging her position within the Academy. She also, on the set of Coquette, was pretty awful. She fired one of her longtime friends, Charles Rochner, and her cameraman because he dared to yell "cut" when a shadow fell across her face. Mary Pickford unfortunately set a standard for women in Hollywood that was not a positive standard for women in Hollywood, and largely contributed to a lot of negative stereotypes that exist that have held women back in Hollywood for a very long time. Mary Pickford did a lot of good for women in entertainment, but at the same time, her legacy is by no means a positive one in a lot of areas.
I would very much disagree with that. To say Mary Pickford's legacy is not a positive one, that's just not true.
Not in all areas.
Well, yeah, but in a day and age where you have all of these women who are unfortunately afraid to speak up because of the little power that they have, I'm not surprised that she would get a little angry. I would be angry too if I'm not being taken seriously as an incredible artist like Mary Pickford. Throw the Oscar out the window. I don't even care about it. It's not even in my argument. What Mary Pickford did to change movies was not in the films. It was all behind the scenes. So her being an actress, I'm barely talking about that. I'm talking about the things that she did behind the scenes and like paving a way for future women to come. And her getting angry on set, that's very understandable. I'm not surprised to hear that at all.
And Kimber, what do you think about Dorothy Asner as we wrap up?
I think it's a shame that so much of this argument focused on people's personal lives. I think that it's really interesting that she was queer. I myself am queer. I think it's interesting the things that she did, but I want to know where the work is resonating nowadays. I feel like my choice is very clearly nowadays. I'm trying to understand where the influence lies with this argument.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, kind of building off what Kimber had said with Dorothy, sorry, like arguably her most famous film being Dance Girl Dance wasn't a huge success when it came out, and again, it didn't really make ripples until the 70s. So she was ahead of her time, yes, but when with somebody like Mary Pickford, not only did she affect things in the future, but also while she was working, where Dorothy Asner was more not really doing a whole lot to change things in her inner circles. Yes, she had a ton of adversity against her, and I commend her for that, and I really admire. But when I look at the people that really changed movies forever, Mary Pickford is just a step above Dorothy Asner, but I think that step is important.
Really quickly, what I'll say about her influence today. One of the major things that people will say against LGBTQ inclusion in cinema is that it's some new thing, or it's just a fad, or they'll write it off as being being something that's about our time right now. Dorothy Asner's story of triumph and overcoming adversity sets her up as a perfect example of how LGBTQ contributions to cinema have been there since the dawn of time. She stands there because perhaps the most important thing about film right now is telling stories that need to be told. And it is sad to me that the story of Dorothy Asner is largely being overlooked now, and it makes me happy that people are starting to recognize how important she really was.
Kimber, do you want to get final thoughts in too?
Yeah, I'd love to. Alma Rebel is an unsung hero. She did so much work. It's ridiculous to say that her work with Hitchcock is devalued in some way because his name is attached to it. There's been tons of women working behind dudes and making their work better since the beginning. The gay thing is bothering me a little bit with Jonathan's argument. There's always been gays in theater. That's a ridiculous thing to say. Her personal life had nothing to do with this. She worked on well over 20 movies. Again, not all of them with Hitchcock. But it has been said that the Alfred Hitchcock touch had 4 hands, and 2 of them were Alma's. She was massively important. He spent his entire speech in his AFI Lifetime Achievement Award saying basically that it wouldn't be his without her. It's so influential that she even had a movie made in recent years with Anthony Hopkins as Hitchcock and Helen Mirren as her. And for anyone to have their Mirren speaks volumes about how important they are. I feel her.
Woohoo! All right, guys. Good job.
Yeah, good job. 3 really powerful choices there. 3 women who have had such a lasting impact on film today. Firstly, Jonathan, I love that you studied feminist film theory. I think that's great. I wish I studied feminist film theory because it's something close to my heart. Mary Pickford is such a good choice, taking out any personal stuff. I think she really was so influential behind the scenes. And Dorothy, like you said, Jonathan, is now starting to get her dues, but it took her so long before people recognized her brilliance. But she definitely has left her mark, and she was an important figure throughout film history. But I'm going to go with Kimber.
Go. Ah, darn.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Go with Kimber, and then we'll go to fact checking.
Sorry, I forgot about fact checking.
I did too. Don't feel bad.
My judging on movie fights as well. I'm always forgetting about the fact checking and about the chat.
Alicia, you know way more about film than I do, so it's not like I'm here. I did want to point out that both Dorothy Asner and Mary Pickford are mentioned in Alicia's lovely book. That's where I was looking at a lot of the facts, double checking instead of using the internet, just for fun. It mentions in Alicia's book that Dorothy Asner taught at UCLA, where she mentored Francis Ford Coppola.
Yep.
So that probably would have been, something cool to point out. I'd also like to point out, as far as Alma Rebel goes, that she was actually working in the film industry before Hitchcock, and they met at the same studio. So I thought that was pretty cool. She started, like Kimber said, started off as a cutter, which was predominantly a job done by women until later in the industry.
Okay,
What
cool.
did Twitter have to say? Anything good?
We got a few alternate suggestions. Billy Pollahan brought up Olivia
De Havilland.
Yeah, De Havilland. I was having trouble reading that. Lots of love for all the choices. Nolan brought up Audrey Hepburn. Florence Lawrence. Sam. And I have a poll after the judging is done.
Okay, cool.
Sorry,
So,
Alicia.
yes.
Anyway, who
No,
won?
no. Sorry about that. Was totally my fault. I should know how these things go. But yes, Kimber, I'm going with you because I think you made a strong point about how Alma has been influential in film history today on current day film because she was working with Hitchcock, and I'm just taking out all the stuff about personal behind the scenes stories because I agree that it should just be about the work. So yay.
Good job. Well done, Kimber. What did the poll have to say, Joe?
Half of the voters on the poll will agree. The other half went for Mary Pickford. Dorothy, unfortunately, didn't get any love, but, you know, we are all the winners for having all three of these women in our historical lives.
Just wait about 30 years and Dorothy will get more love, I promise.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's go into round 2 speed round. Alicia, I'm going to reread these categories for you. You can pick from this. Good job, guys, so far. Holiday Brouhaha, Monster Mash, Lady Rabbit Ears, and Ragnarok of Ages.
All right, because I have no idea what it means, I'm going to go with Lady Rabbit Ears.
Awesome. All right, here's another tough one, guys. You ready? What female TV character is the best role model for women? Okay. Jonathan and Garrett.
Wonder Woman, Justice League animated series.
Okay, and Jonathan.
Mary, Sherlock.
Oh, very nice. All right, so Kimber, you're going to go first. Garrett, you're going to go second. Jonathan, you're going to go third. You will have 30 seconds and 20 seconds for this round, guys. Kimber, whenever you're ready, time starts when you start talking.
Leslie Knope is my hero. She gets so much done. They say repeatedly throughout the show that she does the work of 5 people. She maintains this upbeat personality and gets all of her goals done while also having a rich life with her friends and family. She does what every woman wishes that they could do, which is be this power boss person, but still retain their social life and have fun doing the whole thing. Like, she does the opposite of hating work. She loves her work. She pours her entire self into her work. She becomes...
All right. Garrett, you're second with Wonder Woman from Justice League America.
Wonder Woman is such an important role in the Justice League. She's arguably one of the most powerful in the Justice League. She's a strong independent woman coming from an island just built on women. She's such, as you can see from these year's Halloween costumes, these little girls look up to this woman so much. She's such a model of independence and strength, whereas these other 2 characters, I just don't think that little girls should really be looking up to them. Like, I think that it's much easier for like a child to look up to Wonder Woman than
time. All right, and Jonathan.
Spoiler warning. So the beauty of Mary's role in the latest series of Sherlock is that even after her unfortunate demise, she was able to, her effects are felt on the most influential and the most powerful detective team in possibly all of art ever written. Mary, the way that they have elevated her within the show to become her own hero and to become a person who's able to motivate and drive people along, and also to be the smartest person in the room, even in the same room as Sherlock Holmes himself, is absolutely astounding. The
time. Okay, Kimber, 20 seconds.
Irene Adler's a better choice than Mary. I think that the strength that Leslie Knope has here is that she's like a real woman goals. Like, I want to be like Leslie Knope. I wish that the president was like Leslie Knope because she is such an amazing politician and she's everything that you want leadership to be. The people that you picked aren't realistic people you would want to be like. I think if more women wanted to be like Leslie Knope, and she did.
Okay, Garrett.
I don't think it's unrealistic to want to be like Wonder Woman, you know, to be like an independent woman and to be strong and not really need men. In fact, you can really overpower them if you're really pushed to the edge to do. I think that is a testament to how strong she is if she's able to stand on her own from the Justice League, like the strongest people in the comics.
And Jonathan.
The beauty of role models that exist a little bit outside of realistic goals is that they give something that everyone can strive to because it is a bigger goal than anyone individually. Mary is a supportive, but also a strong. She is a smart, but also a gracious. She is as emotionally deep as you can get. There's so much about the character of Mary that is emulatable for people of all ages, regardless.
Time. Ooh, wow.
Ooh, yeah.
That was a good one.
It was a real good one. Jack, I'm going to put you in play here. Well, what are your thoughts?
I really liked Kimber's, like, I could be this woman. Like, this is an obtainable goal. This is realistic. I thought that was really cool. I mean, I think that women do aspire to be Wonder Woman when they see Wonder Woman, like they want to play superheroes. So that argument also kind of resonated with me. But I think the reality of Kimber's argument really stuck with me. So I would have gone with Kimber on this one.
Yeah. What about you, Sam? What do you think?
I like the Wonder Woman, how not just older people, but young girls can look up to her, whereas I don't know how many young girls watch the other shows.
Okay, so we've got the battle between the real woman goals, the older woman goals, or the young woman goals. Yeah, it's really hard.
This is tough. This is a really tough one.
You both made, or you all three made such good arguments. I am going to go with Garrett and Wonder Woman because I do like the idea of young girls having a strong person to look up to, and I did like the point that you said about how she is strong within this really strong team of men, and she stands apart from them, and she's independent. So I'm going to go with you, Garrett.
Nice
It's
job,
not a
Garrett.
shutout. Hooray.
Woohoo! And no one's getting shut out today. Everyone's got a point. It's all tied up. Well done. Garrett, that means you get to control round two. Who goes first, second, and third, buddy?
I'll go first. I'll kick it off, and then we'll go to Kimber, and then Mr. Youngblood.
Okay. Let me read the question for round two. And we won't forget our fact checkers this time, don't worry.
No, I won't.
All right. What is the greatest black and white film of all time? So, Garrett, you're going to lead us off.
I am picking what is easily the greatest black and white film of all time. Excuse me, got to clear the throat for this one. Citizen Kane. It's a little old movie directed by, not directed by, but involving Orson Welles. It's a film that not only was very powerful the day it came out, even though that you have people like William Randolph Hearst who kind of buried it in the dirt, but it's a film that also resonates today with some of the political people that we have. It's a film that even all these years later, this film was in the 1940s, can still resonate with people and still inspire people to go out and to create and also to make a difference in society.
Awesome. Kimber, what'd you pick?
Yeah, I could have put money down that you guys were going to pick the movies that you did. This is what I expected to be fighting, but I wanted to pick something that personally meant a lot to me, like what I genuinely believe the best black and white movie is. And I also love about this movie that it didn't have to be black and white. In fact, the director fought so strongly to make it in black and white because it was a hugely important artistic choice for this movie. And I picked Young Frankenstein.
Fantastic. Jonathan Youngblood, what'd you pick?
I picked what is possibly the most recognizable and most well-known of black and white cinema, something that stands as an Oscar winner, stands as a cultural landmark, and involves some of the best performances ever to grace the screen. I picked Casablanca.
Fantastic. Guys, Alicia, it's all yours.
Go for it, guys.
I'm going to quote Roger Ebert here a little bit loosely when he was talking about Casablanca compared to Citizen Kane. He was saying that Citizen Kane is the better film, but Casablanca is more loved. And I think that is it's a very true point to make. And with Young Frankenstein's hilarious. I watched it this Halloween. It's a great movie, but I think to be the greatest black and white film of all time, meaning that it's not just a good movie, but I think it personally, to be the greatest black and white film of all time literally means to be one of the greatest movies of all time. So I think that it has to go above just being a good movie. It's got to change things about art and about everything like that, and I just don't think that Young Frankenstein really changed a lot.
My movie, he took in the 70s when black and white film was basically dead and said, I will only film this movie when he's a huge director. And if it is on thick black and white film, nobody was doing this. And he was the top grossing, third top grossing movie of the year in the 70s, with a black and white film. That's completely unheard of. I'd say that it's his best movie and his biggest collaboration with Gene Wilder, because Gene Wilder, who I would say it's ridiculous if you think he's not influential and important and one of the greatest of all time in his field, helped him edit himself into making wonderful choices. You don't get the classic like Mel Brooks cameo in this movie, because this is an elevated movie above just being a comedy. This is an homage to 1930s beautiful classic horror. It literally had set pieces from the original Frankenstein on set. Like, his attention to detail with this and his artistic choice to keep it in black and white made black and white movies relevant in a time that they weren't. I feel like he made it more modern to make black and white movies. To pick a movie that's black and white just because it's old and that it's a classic, it doesn't have to be that to be the best black and white movie of all time. That's why the question has of all time in it. And it's also not like what's the most board winning of all time. It's best. Best is the question, and of all time.
We have all picked three very good movies within our individual genres. I think we have some of the best of mystery and best of drama and best of comedy here. But here's the reason why Casablanca is such an important pick for me, and why I think that it stands the test of time better than anything else. Citizen Kane. Cliche answer, especially on a movie fights fight about being the best. It definitely stands up very well. Everyone knows it. It's great. But
there's a reason why people
definitely.
I mean, it's wrong.
You will not catch me saying Citizen Kane is a bad movie. But the thing is, the reason why Casablanca stands the test of time better, because all of us have picked good movies. Casablanca is the one that if you go to someone on the street and you say, "Here's looking at you, kid." Or you say the misquoted "play it again, Sam." If you mention Casablanca, they will know what you're talking about. Citizen Kane's a great movie, but there aren't the iconic scenes in Citizen Kane that there are in Casablanca. Young Frankenstein is a hilarious movie, but for me at least, if we're picking the best of the best, there is a certain amount of prestige that comes with that. And Young Frankenstein may be one of the better comedies that we've had, but unfortunately, like Garrett said, I don't think that it holds that cultural weight and significance for cinema. Both of your films have what I would say is they don't capitalize on their medium as well as I would say Casablanca does. Citizen Kane and Young Frankenstein both, I would say, give you a rather bleak and bland picture of what black and white cinema can do.
Okay, I'm cutting you off right there. Casablanca, and to say that it doesn't build anything on the medium, the only profound thing that Casablanca has to say about its time is that Nazis are real bad. Citizen Kane is a film that breaks tropes and talks about a heavy political figure at the time, and one that actually was so enraged by this that he didn't want it to exist because he was so infuriated by this movie. And to say that Casablanca did more with its movie
I'm talking about the
Kane
medium of black and white
outlandish.
cinematography in general. I'm talking about the use of color within a two-tone system. Casablanca has more vibrancy and it has more vividness to it. It truly does give you the full range that you can achieve through black and white filming.
Okay, I do think it's a little funny for you to call his movie a cliche, because I think that's the problem with both of your guys' movies. We've gotten to a point where these movies are so old and there's been so many cultural references to these movies that it's like you can't watch it without that affecting you. Everybody hears the references before they see the movie. It spoils both of your movies. At least my movie's a little more recent to the point where it hasn't just been repeatedly just the quotes all day long, to the point where you can't even watch the film without having the ending spoiled for you. I don't think Young Frankenstein, when I could watch that movie right now. I could watch that movie anytime. Like, I don't feel like either one of your movies, like, you would have to have, like, okay, I'm gonna, on Sunday, I'm gonna watch Casablanca or whatever. Like, Young Frankenstein is literally just put on at any moment because it's that watchable. Like,
yeah, but to say a movie is more watchable, like The Avengers is more watchable than Schindler's List, but is it a better movie? No. And I think that when you prefaced your argument with saying, I picked a movie that was really close to me, I don't think that should be forgotten. Like, I love Young Frankenstein, but it does, like, heart, and I do think that we could have a fight on what is the best Mel Brooks movie. That could be like a legitimate fight. To say that this film is greater than any other movie of all time that is black and white, that's really blowing this film out of proportion. That's a pretty funny movie.
your guys' argument could be what's the lowest hanging fruit, because I can't believe you both just went to the easiest pick.
The thing about easy picks is that oftentimes the easy pick is right.
Good in black and white.
But the question wasn't what black and white film that doesn't get enough love should. You know, it's like, what's the greatest black and white movie of all time?
It's like someone saying, what's the best Marvel superhero and picking the one no one's heard of. Like, there is a reason why iconic exists. There's a reason why cultural longevity exists. It's because a movie stands up the test of time. Saying that our picks are less valid because they're easy basically stands up against 70 years of film criticism that have established the legacy the way it is.
I do have a bone to pick with Casablanca, though, and this isn't just like, sometimes in the show you kind of pick arguments that you don't really feel. This is a legitimate problem that I have with Casablanca, and when I've watched that film several times now, and a problem that I do have with that movie going away from it is I do not think that the relationship in that movie works as well as it should. Even Elsa's character says everything we knew or ever became was because of him, and she looked at him and worshipped him with a feeling she supposed was love.
That's the thing.
Hold on. Their whole relationship in Paris is the most arbitrary sugar plum relationship in the world. They don't tell anything about each other. They're just like, hey, you're super attractive. I like you. Let's hang out. So like when they meet back in Casablanca and you're like, oh, what is this relationship between the two of them? And they cut back to Paris and they're like, oh, I kind of knew her. Not really. Like that whole relationship that is the crux of this movie, it's just not as strong as it should be for a movie as iconic and as like one of the best in the genre of romances as Casablanca. Whereas Citizen Kane, I have not heard one single argument against Citizen Kane besides the fact that, hey, that's a good movie. People talk about that a lot. Like I have actual qualms with your guys' films, and Citizen Kane.
Okay.
It's just
two things. First of all, Casablanca in its deepest form is about the idyllic nature of pre-war versus the dark, more realistic version of during war sensibilities. So the fact that there's an idyllic relationship that existed before everyone arrived at Casablanca is actually a commentary on the times and a commentary on the entire feel of society before and during the war. So yes, you're right. But the thing is, that's the point. Like, the relationship isn't supposed to be perfect.
Okay,
now, for qualms with Citizen Kane,
that doesn't work as a romance. When the whole film is based on should they or shouldn't they? Should she go with her husband? Should they stay together?
The politics of Casablanca is primarily a commentary on the politics of the time, and secondarily a story of a love triangle. When
people think of that film, they think of the two of them. Like, they think of that relationship. Here's looking at you, kid. Play it again, Sam. Those are all scenes tied to the relationship. Like the scenes that you're quoting.
Play It Again, Sam is about the idyllic nature of pre-war sensibilities.
Exactly.
But Citizen Kane. Okay, you want someone to crap on Citizen Kane. Let me say my handful of problems with Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane has very, very rough pacing. It jumps from being extremely fast-paced to being long and drawn out with 20-minute segments. It opens with a 10-minute voiceover segment that is entirely tell and zero show with like ham-fisted social references that would make a Family Guy episode proud. Like,
doesn't Casablanca also start with text and narration at the beginning?
Sure, but the problem is that actually establishes the characters. Yours tells the prequel story in 10 minutes.
It's talking about Xanadu and all the things that are happening.
The Casablanca voiceover is a couple minutes long. Yours is literally over 10 minutes long of newsreel footage. Like, narratively and structurally, Citizen Kane is beautiful in terms of the way that it crafts the rise and fall of a person. It has some awesome political commentary, but I will say structurally, it falls under the weight of its own pretentiousness. It wants to accomplish something. Oh,
what do you think, Jonathan, about Young Frankenstein?
Young Frankenstein, it's a wonderfully funny movie. I'll say it's extremely lowbrow. It beats jokes into the ground in a way that it's entertaining, and I'll say it's a very fun, casual watch. But the problem is, I'm not going to pick a Judd Apatow movie as the best movie of the 2000s. He's made some great movies, but I'm not going to do that. There's an enduring quality to Casablanca and Citizen Kane. We are talking about it 80 years later for these movies, and we will still be talking about these movies 80 years from now. Young Frankenstein, for me, is a good comedy, but it doesn't really have anything greater to say about society. It doesn't have anything greater to say about culture. All it really does is entertain, and to me, cinema exists to do more than just entertain.
And I would also piggyback on that in saying that Young Frankenstein wasn't necessarily the first movie to use black and white medium to make fun of the universal monsters. Abbott and Costello had been doing that for years. And in fact, by the time that Young Frankenstein had come out, it was something that people had seen before. It's like, it wasn't like it broke new ground in making fun of Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, Meet Dracula, Meet the Wolfman. It's been something that had been happening forever, throwing these comedic elements into these classic horror films. It really didn't take that long after those movies to come out for Abbott and Costello to do that. So to say that Mel Brooks like did something that no one had ever seen before, I wouldn't say is really super accurate.
All right, guys, that is the timer.
That's not what
for
I was
rounds.
saying. I said that Mel Brooks used black and white film to reinvigorate that genre in a time that it wasn't being used.
Yeah, but
Abbott
how many
Costello
black and white comedies came out after that?
Well, here's what we want to do. So since Alicia's okay with this, I heard enough from John and from Garrett. Let's do Kimber's final thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys, like, oh man, it's like, to say that a movie can't be funny and be an important movie is ridiculous to me. You're undercutting an entire genre that's important in entertainment. Like, movies are for entertainment. To say that a funny movie can't be important really hurts me, and I feel like you're missing the point. Also, to compare somebody like Mel Brooks to Judd Apatow actually seems super unfair. Like, he was obviously elevated above doing the normal comedy things. And also, you're saying stuff like, this movie, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have any themes. It's Frankenstein. Frankenstein is a classic story that definitely has lots of themes about what men do and when they have too much power, how things get out of hand. Like, you guys have a dusty old argument about some dusty old movies. I'm trying to talk about movies that are bringing black and white into the future of film, and that's what my argument for Young Frankenstein is.
Awesome. That's a great way to end it.
Yeah, great way. All right, so before I forget, let's go to the facts and Twitter.
All right, this is a very brutal round. Just to point out some things, Orson Welles was 25 years old when he directed and starred in Citizen Kane. He was also co-writer on the script, and he had unprecedented power at the time. But then when the film came out, all the controversy, it kind of like really like did a nosedive on his personal career in the film industry. Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks had like an off-camera cameo in that one where he's like the voice of a cat, but definitely not an on-camera cameo because of the stipulations from Gene Wilder. And that's about it. Fact-wise, everything else was pretty clean.
So we have a lot of really good suggestions for other ones for this round, ones that people brought up. Langley brought up Schindler's List. Sam brought up The Kelly Gang. Chase suggested both Psycho and 12 Angry Men. Jazzy Goose brought up All About Eve. Mac over at Gamer Grudge brought up Rashomon. Billy is fighting for Kong. Tom Zambino, who's got a show this afternoon to keep an eye out for, brought up Dr. Strangelove. Eric Ossenmacher brought up Sunset Boulevard. And Janine DeBean, who does all of our lovely logo work, brought up the 1959 version of Imitation of Life, which is a film that I watched in one of my Real America classes.
Oh, so cool. So many great black and white films. And I have my favorites as well. And as always with these kind of shows, it's tough when you are arguing three wonderful films and you have to argue against these films. So I will say that I loved a lot of the counter arguments. I thought that everybody did well in trying to bring down each other's choice, given that all the films are classics for a reason. But I'm going to go with Jonathan and Casablanca just because I thought that you were the most effective in bringing down the other two, and you also talked about Casablanca in terms of its cultural weight and how it's a movie that you definitely want to rewatch and how it capitalized on its medium for black and white film. I would have gone with Citizen Kane because that's my personal choice, but Gareth wanted to hear a little bit more about the cinematic achievements of the filmmaking. And Kimber, I definitely agree with you that comedy is always pushed aside in favor of these other, dramas and classic films. So I don't think that Young Frankenstein should be pushed aside because it's a comedy, because it is a really, really good film. So there you go. Congratulations, Jonathan.
Woo! Nicely done.
We got the poll, and one last suggestion. Jonathan Peck just slided in with a late one of Path of Glory.
Oh my gosh.
But Young Frankenstein is the winner of this poll with 48% or 45%. Casablanca with 28% and Citizen Kane with 27%.
And this round is actually kind of a retread of a battle we had done before where Citizen Kane was also fought. And this is the second time that Citizen Kane has lost on our show.
I know. I think it is such a shame that it does become what is called the cliched answer. But I agree with you guys that it's not because it's iconic for a reason. And there's so many great parts of it. It's just nothing that you really want to watch, you know, on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah,
but
exactly. I'm not a Citizen Kane fan personally,
but
but
I love it. I love the
I like what it does cinematically. It's just not.
It was one of the films that I studied to learn about framing and editing and deep focus photography. So for those reasons, I really love Citizen Kane. But I'm a nerd.
Citizen Kane is going to be our BFF for our show that we're going to do this Sunday at 7 Eastern, which is a little earlier than we normally do it because we have Thor tickets. But we'll be talking all about Citizen Kane because Joe had never seen it before. I've seen it so many times. I wrote a paper about the deep focus cinematography, which I did not get a good grade on, by the way. Because I did not follow the directions. My kids were so good, I still got a good grade, but not like an A, which is what I wanted. But anyway, that was still bitter.
You know, and this is actually a quick commentary on how people teach film, because when I saw Citizen Kane, I think in grade school, and the person who was teaching us about the film didn't really find a way to excite us about what that movie was really about. So we're just a bunch of kids. I think it was like 8th grade. We're a bunch of kids trying to watch Citizen Kane and like have any type of real perspective on it at all. And it was really just, you know, I think that contributed to my dislike of the movie, because
I would never
saw it at
show
the time
to my class because it would just be like complaints the whole time. Like you have to wait till you're a little older to see that movie, I think
I think you need Scott Matz to teach the class. He would get everyone excited about Citizen Kane.
The commentary on the Blu-ray is also fantastic.
So guys, let's get into round 3, our final group of rounds here. Just to let you all know, this one's going to be really important because there's a lot of duplicate answers on this mystery round. This is the mystery round coming up.
Speed round?
Yeah, we're doing the speed round first, but then we'll do the mystery round. I'm teasing the mystery round. So we have one more speed round to do, and then whoever wins this will get to choose the order that they go in for round 3, which is going to be super, super important because you guys have duplicated your answers for sure. And let's start again. The categories are Holiday Brouhaha, Monster Mash, and Ragnarok of Ages.
I'm going to go with Ragnarok of Ages.
All right. Ragnarok of Ages. The question is, what is the best licensed song used in any comic book movie?
Ooh.
I'll do Immigrant Song in Ragnarok.
Okay. A lot of comic book movies out right now with really good licensed music.
The times they are changing. Watchmen.
Ooh, very good.
I'm blanking on the name. It's Brandy from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
All right, perfect. And Garrett, and that's Jonathan, and Kimber. So Kimber, you will start us off with Immigrant Song. You'll have 30 seconds whenever you are ready.
Sure. The trailer that they put out for Thor Ragnarok, nothing got me as pumped as that trailer, and it in huge part was to the Immigrant Song, because like you were like, man, they spent money to get this song, and it's because it was so perfect. Like you're seeing Thor and it's Hammer of the Gods, and like you get so pumped, and they didn't even wait for it in the movie. It was so nice they used it twice. Like that was an important, huge part of a movie that meant the whole meaning of the movie is to get you pumped up, have fun. And this music in it, like, was a huge part of what they did to get you that feeling.
Awesome. Jonathan, you're next with The Watchmen.
Bob Dylan is one of the greatest songwriters ever to grace us with his presence, and the use of his song in Watchmen signaled the tone of the entire movie. The ideas of rebellion and the ideas of nostalgia wrapped up all together, and the longing for something that once was. No song in a comic movie has set the tone for the movie that was to come as well as this choice. This was a genius opportunity to be able to basically encapsulate the entire film's runtime in a 3-minute segment that gives you the history of the Watchmen and gives you everything that's happened over the time and the way that they...
Garrett.
Brandy and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 not only is a great song, but it also has a really important, sad thematic element into the film. Whereas with the Thor Ragnarok song, and that song is used again twice in the movie, and I think it's worse the first time because they kind of ruin it, and it has diminishing returns. And with Watchmen, that song is in that scene is a bit too highbrow for the rest of the movie because the rest of the film looks like it was made from an elementary school student. So it just doesn't really work. It has this weird oh, you're starting really high and then it goes way low because
I had to buzz you. You're talking down about the Watchmen. No, I'm kidding. Kimber, 20 seconds whenever you're ready.
The Cat Stevens song at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 worked better for me than this one. It felt a little shoehorned into the movie, and him singing the lyrics was a little cheesy. I'm going to stick with my movie, getting pumped up, having a great classic song that everybody knows over a sad moment in a movie with music that's been done a million times. This got us hyped for this film. And
all right, Garrett. Garrett?
Times are
wait, sorry, Garrett. I think it's Jonathan. My bad. Excuse me.
Right.
Sorry, my fault. Jonathan, whenever you're ready.
Garrett, I think your Snyder bias of not liking him is still showing more than actually your good arguments. And as for Immigrant Song, it's a great moment of melodrama and cheesiness, but Times They Are Changing actually means something to the structure and the plot of the film. It's symbolic. It is actually significant. It fills a gap that would be very bad if it was not there. It is actually something that...
Time. Now, Garrett, sorry.
Kimber's whole argument is that the song gets you so pumped, but again, they kind of just waste it on a nothing scene at the beginning of the film. I don't think this part is cheesy at all. Kurt Russell explaining how the lyrics mean, that means that there's purpose in putting the song in the movie. It's not just a pretty cool song. And also Bob Dylan, that Times Are Changing is not his best song. It's probably one of the most popular, but it's not that good. The lyrics are kind of...
Time.
Oh, yeah. It's
Yikes.
you guys hit all three reasons for having a song in a movie. Is it to elicit emotion, like the sad song in Guardians of the Galaxy? Is it to pump you up and get excited, like Immigrant Song? Or is it to signal a tone and a structure of a movie, like Times They Are Changing and Watchmen, which, by the way, I think gets a bad rep. I kind of enjoy
I like that movie a
Watchmen.
lot.
It's amazing.
I really do. And I think, he has a certain visual style, and it definitely is at its best in Watchmen. So this is where I'm going to ask Jack and Sam for help.
Oh, yay. Who are you going to first, Alicia?
Jack, let's go for you first.
Okay, so I was torn on this. I think I really liked Kimber's argument, but I think that the thing that goes against it the most, because I just saw this movie last night, is Garrett's point that they used it twice and that they
used it about his song more than once in the movie too.
No, but which wasn't made in the arguments. But I think for me, I noticed it the second time as having been used twice. I actually was like, oh, they're using this song again, and it stood out because of that. And not necessarily in a positive way, although I really was pumped. But I think Jonathan's argument about what the Watchmen's Times They Are Changing did for that movie, it basically did tell the entire story of the film with one song in that whole amazing intro. So I'm actually leaning with Jonathan on this one.
What about you, Sam?
Someone might have dropped their phone halfway through that and missed most of that, so probably best to skip it.
At least he's honest.
Yeah. Aussies are always honest. Okay, well, I'm going to agree with you, Jack, and go with Jonathan for the reason that you said about the Bob Dylan song being a signal of nostalgia and meaning something to the entire structure of the movie. So go with Jonathan.
All right, good job. That means, Jonathan, you have 3 points. Garrett, you have 1 point. Kimber, you have 1 point. No one is out of it because the mystery round is a 2-point round. So someone can tie here. No one's done. So let's get into it, guys. The mystery round. Jonathan, what order would you like to go in?
I'll start, then Kimber, then Garrett.
Okay. Garrett, I will tell you ahead of time because this is important. Think of a third pick. Just in case.
Son of a bitch. Okay.
Think of a third pick. There's only one combination that could have possibly happened where someone would have needed a third pick. This was the combination that Garrett went last. I didn't want to spoil it by telling you this ahead of time, but you're good, Gary. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right. So, Jonathan, you're going to get to tell us your pick first. We're going to give a few, or how are we on time? Actually, we're good on time. So I will give you guys a few extra minutes because this round is so important. And Jonathan, read the question, Jack. Filmstruck is the official home of the Criterion Collection, where you can stream some of the most important films in cinema history. So we must know, who is the best director with a film appearing in the Criterion Collection? This is not a movie question, it is a director question. So you're looking for the best director. That's where your argument should go. Jonathan, you get to go first. Who did you pick?
My pick is a director who had to fight for almost every single film he had released, had countless films banned, and stands the test of time as one of the most subversive and creative directors to ever hit Hollywood. I'm going with Stanley Kubrick.
You know what? Actually, I take it back, Garrett. You're going to be fine.
Oh, fantastic.
You're going to be fine. Kimber, you're up second. Who did you pick?
I picked someone who I consider a true artist, who has an absolute style of his own, who is still relevant today and still working on things, who every time I watch their movies, they excite me. And I almost fought Eraserhead for the black and white round. I'm going to pick David Lynch.
Fantastic. Then Garrett, you're third. Who did you pick?
For my best director with a film appearing in the Criterion Collection, I didn't just limit myself to being in the Criterion Collection. I picked Akira Kurosawa, who's not just one of the best directors in the Criterion Collection, but literally one of the greatest filmmakers of all time.
There you go. All right, guys, fight it out. Alicia, it's all yours.
It's gonna be good. Go for it. I want to hear this.
Cute, that Garrett has the same opening argument. Everything that he's fought is the best of all time. But I wanted to pick somebody who is the most unique of all time, somebody who none of these directors could have done anything like. You know, Kubrick has been imitated many times, and I would say that imitated well by people like Paul Thomas Anderson. But no one can really do Lynch. That's why Lynch is still making stuff. Like Twin Peaks just came back 25 years after. He's one of the few people I could think of who would say, I'm going to do the show, like, see you in 25 years. And then he fucking did it, man. Like, he came back 25 years later, and that would not happen without Lynch. None of them would have done it without Lynch. Also, another point above Kubrick is that people like working with Lynch. Kubrick terrified and, like, everybody he ever worked with. Lynch is the type of person I would want to work with as an artist or an actor.
I think the thing about David Lynch, though, is the question is about the best director. David Lynch is a really solid writer, but as a director, it's not even close. His writing is far better than his directing. So I think that when you compare the directing of David Lynch to Stanley Kubrick and Akira Kurosawa, not even close. If we're talking about the best writer who has a film in the Criterion Collection, David Lynch is a really solid answer, but as a director, probably not.
And here's the thing. David Lynch has a couple of solid film picks as director. He has some movies that have endured. The thing, when you stack up filmographies, though, against Stanley Kubrick, who gave us the best sci-fi of all time with 2001: A Space Odyssey, gave us some of the best political satires of all time with Dr. Strangelove and Paths of Glory, did the highest budget epic up until then with Spartacus, which I think is his most criminally underrated film, and it debuted things like Steadicam and The Shining, and just completely blew everything out of the water with almost every single film that he released. Even his weakest films are still considered to be great films. That is Stanley Kubrick's.
You know.
Waiting for the Eyes Wide Shut mention.
Well, I was saying Barry Lyndon. I like Eyes Wide Shut.
Man, everyone does, but like the thing that you're going to get with Lynch that you're not going to get with these other guys is a completely unique perspective. When I was a kid, I remember watching The Elephant Man, and that was the first time I was really entranced in a movie. I felt like I was watching art. I was like, what is this bizarre and beautiful thing that I'm watching right now? And that's magic that you either have or you don't. And Lynch is the only person who really has this voice that he has, even literally. He's such a unique human being in general, and it really speaks to his movies. And to say that he's just a good writer is criminal.
No.
Everything about that makes him good.
I think he's better at writing than he is at directing, and I think when you're comparing these directors, I do think that that's an important point to make.
Here's the problem that I have with what's been said about Stanley Kubrick. saying that a director does not give you a unique perspective, a unique experience because other people after him have imitated him is a very presentist way of looking at cinema.
I was saying that Lynch cannot be replicated and that Kubrick has been replicated quite well.
Sure, you stand on the shoulders of giants when you create art. That's the beauty of creating. The fact that Stanley Kubrick has been so imitated.
What I'm saying, though, what I'm saying is that there's no one like Lynch. You're not answering the.
Well, there's uniqueness does not a great director make. And I'm not saying David Lynch is not a great director, but I'm saying that compared to Stanley Kubrick and Akira Kurosawa, who we have neglected this fight, so let's get to Akira Kurosawa. My problem with Akira Kurosawa is okay, first of all, Seven Samurai is deservedly considered one of the best films ever made. Like, I'm not going to shit on his best films, but if you look at Akira Kurosawa's filmography, and he has a large one, the thing that epitomizes his development as a director is kind of going wherever the wind blows. He started off making propaganda pieces for the Japanese government, and then when Japan lost, he decided to make like westerns and like placating to the Western audience. Akira Kurosawa's directorial skills are very great. He was able to really immerse his team into what they were working on. My problem with him is that as a creative figure, he really was just a signal of the times, and he wasn't really that much of a actual creative figure himself.
I mean, expound upon that. I'm a little confused on what you're saying. Like, can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. For the first 5 films by Akira Kurosawa, I believe, all took place immediately. All were made immediately after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And even without the pressure from the Japanese government, his early filmography is puff pieces on the Japanese government. As soon as the Axis powers were defeated, Akira Kurosawa started to like think, I wonder, maybe I'm going to start making movies that are more Western influenced now because that will get me popular in Hollywood. Basically epitomized by the complete flop that was Tora, Tora, Tora. So Akira Kurosawa's legacy is one of ups and downs that don't actually, that stem a lot from the culture of the time and not from the genius that was his own mind, like Stanley Kubrick.
Okay, well, thank you for elaborating on that. But okay, when you have somebody like Akira Kurosawa who's making films for the Japanese government at the time who were not nice.
He wasn't, though.
We were saying like making puff pieces at the time, whatever. Like the Japanese government at the time were not nice people. So like I don't blame him for kind of being like, sure, man, whatever. Like I'll make whatever you want. But then going on and making these westerns with these samurais and these really subversive genre films, I don't think being a product of his time is a bad thing, especially since he's such a prolific director that really permeates decades. And a lot of the modern day westerns and a lot of the films that you see today, like even superhero movies, take notes from Akira Kurosawa. This is also a director, by the way, who has 27 films in the Criterion Collection, which is a lot more than anyone else. And with Stanley Kubrick, I do enjoy his films, but just looking merely at the Criterion Collection films that he has, they're not even close to being his best work.
What? Paths of Glory, Dr. Strangelove, Spartacus, Barry Lyndon, which is considered one of the best historical dramas ever. I have no idea where you're coming from there, but
I guess I'd say my personal favorite Stanley Kubrick works are not included in there.
The festival ones aren't in there, but his most significant ones are.
I would just say, like, if you're saying no one else is doing what Lynch is doing, I think that's
no one else is.
Say what?
No one is. No one will ever be Lynch. It won't be Lynch without Lynch. That's why he's still doing it.
Kimber, I want to hear from you what you think about Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah, I think that both of these directors were, as Jonathan said, kind of wishy-washy, and they both tried lots of different things. And what I like about David Lynch and why he is so inspirational to me and a lot of other people is that David Lynch didn't do anything other than David Lynch. He has had one voice this whole time. He has had a vision the entire time. He knows who he is, and he does it perfectly. People love to work with Lynch because he's such a huge creative presence to be around, which is really rare nowadays. I wish that we would have more of these auteurs like making films like Lynch's. He's so special. And writer. You're right. Thank you, Garrett. And he's also an amazing director. And I think that he is well worth being in this argument. And if I have to lose fighting for these people who I think are making something different and doing something with such passion, then I will gladly do it at Lynch's side, because he's one of a kind and he's brilliant.
My point about bringing up the writing thing is I just think like he's a fine director, but when I watch films like The Elephant Man and Eraserhead and Blue Velvet and all of those kind of movies, when I watch them, the directing is not my favorite part of those films. It's his writing. And I think that his writing is so good that it kind of overpowers his directorial style. And like in Akira Kurosawa, like a lot of the main arguments that I've heard is that he's so prolific almost to a fault, which I don't think that having a director that's so hungry to create that they make so many films, I don't think that that's a bad thing. Having somebody that wants to solidify themselves in the legacy of filmmaking and make something that's that changes movies and changes story structure like the way that Akira Kurosawa did, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Like, if I could leave a legacy that is so vast and so massive and different in my like surrounding area, that's a pretty good legacy to leave.
I see Akira Kurosawa in a similar way that I see someone like Stephen King. Extremely prolific, has made a lot of great products, but also made a lot of things that people have forgotten because they just weren't that great. Akira Kurosawa had as many flops and critical failures and commercial failures and movies that have been forgotten completely by history as he has made successes. Stanley Kubrick, on the other hand,
about money.
Sure. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that it's necessarily a bad thing that he put out a lot of things. I'm saying that when you're going through Akira Kurosawa's filmography, you see as many lows as you see highs. When you see Stanley Kubrick's filmography, you see an almost unbroken chain of phenomenal movies. Stanley Kubrick is a reliable figure who made subversive films that pushed boundaries. A Clockwork Orange was banned in the UK until the year 2000. Like, he was pushing envelopes that nobody was pushing when he was creating film. Now, has he been imitated since then? Sure, as all greats have been. We would not have music as we have today if we didn't have Mozart and Beethoven. But the beauty of Stanley Kubrick's filmography is that every single movie has a distinctly Kubrick feel to it, but also is distinctly unique. You could not get more different than Dr. Strangelove and The Shining. You can't get any more different than Paths of Glory and Eyes Wide Shut. He is a truly creative figure.
I think Kimber made a point that Kubrick has been replicated pretty well recently. I just saw The Killing of the Sacred Deer last night, and the director of that film is scary how much like he is like Stanley Kubrick. And I understand that you're saying like standing on the shoulders of giants, but that there are certain elements of this film where a director could take what they did and build upon it.
Bro,
like, if you look at
how many Rashomon TV episodes have there been?
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Rashomon is a trope. Like, every side has a different story is a trope that's been imitated by like The Simpsons and CSI.
I'm not like okay, well then you could say that I'm not talking about Stanley Kubrick's story structure. I'm talking about stylistically, which is what Kubrick is typically known for, is how subversive he was stylistically. With Akira Kurosawa, you could say the same thing about Shakespeare.
Sure.
Like, oh, how many Macbeths have we seen? Does Shakespeare really hold up? Like,
and now you're making my argument.
I can see the clickbait thumbnail right now: 10 reasons why Shakespeare doesn't hold up. Having somebody like Akira Kurosawa make all of these different stories and really pave the way for films to come is not a bad thing. I'm talking about Kubrick's style. And it was something that can be pretty easily replicated with the movie that I saw last night, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. When I was watching that film, all I could think was, this guy could like have the potential to, if he keeps doing what he's doing, to be the next Kubrick. Like, who knows?
And if you look at Japanese cinema today, you will see samurai epics that imitated Kurosawa to wonderful effect.
Not stylistically, though, story structure-wise. I think that's an important distinction.
So, guys, we're moving up on time here, so why don't we start our final thoughts? Jonathan, why don't you start us off here?
Stanley Kubrick like I said in my opening statements, with every single production that he made, fought against a system that wanted him to be silent. He was making anti-war movies that got banned in multiple countries with almost his debut with Paths of Glory. No director that we're discussing today has created movies that are as relevant today as Stanley Kubrick's films. The themes that you see in movies like Strangelove and Paths are as important to us today as they were then. Stanley Kubrick endures in a way that Akira Kurosawa cannot, and has invaded the public consciousness in a way that neither of these directors has. He is considered one of the greats and has inspired so many different people for so many beautiful reasons, and that's the reason why he is the best director of these three.
Kimber.
Okay. So I haven't really heard too many people take down Lynch because, again, I state that he is irreplaceable and no one makes movies like him. And I guess my main argument against you guys is that there are a lot of people, beautiful Renaissance painters, but there's only one Picasso. And that's how I feel about Lynch. He's a genius. I think he has more to come. We're not done with him. And I love everything he's ever touched.
Awesome. Garrett.
I think there's a lot of directors out there that have a unique style like David Lynch, but I've said it again, and I think it's like the main problem with picking him is he's a far better writer than he is director, and the question is about director. And I think the main argument that I've been hearing for him is that David Lynch is David Lynch, and he's been doing David Lynch things. Like, yeah, I mean, because he is a unique director, but there are so many unique directors out there. And unfortunately, because he is still creating, it's hard to see the legacy that he has made with comparing it to somebody like Stanley Kubrick and Akira Kurosawa. Stanley Kubrick, again, talking about the director, he did make some really good movies, but at what cost? That's another argument if you don't want to throw the personal things in there. Akira Kurosawa is one of the most prolific filmmakers of all time, batting a really positive record, having 27 movies in the Criterion Collection. He paved the way for a lot of modern day films and a lot of modern day movies that are built on the structure of Akira Kurosawa's films. Stanley Kubrick typically does these fairly pessimistic looks at mankind and things like that, where Akira Kurosawa was making different films than he was, again, when he was like under the Japanese government's thumb, essentially. And I don't think that should be really a point against him. I just think that the prolificness and the amount of change that Akira Kurosawa made towards story structure is something that is very similar to a Shakespeare or something. I just don't think that that's something that should be forgotten or undersold at all.
And that's it, guys. Well fought.
Woo! Yeah.
I have a quick question for the fact checkers. Can we check when Kurosawa said "sure, man, whatever"? Because
paraphrasing.
Well, so Armageddon is in the Criterion Collection. I'm sad no one picked Bay.
I was going to bring up a few of our alternate suggestions real quick. First off, Chase Geyer, who's in the chat, wanted to tell Alicia he loved her book.
Thanks.
And his alternate was Wes Anderson. Sam, who is our guest here as well, said Terry Gilliam. Holmesy brought up Quentin Tarantino. Billy's a little frustrated that he and Garrett seem to share all the same answers today.
Billy, what's your problem with me, man? You've been dogging me for too long. What's your problem?
And Jonathan Peck brought up Richard Linklater.
Oh, yeah. Well, before we get to the fact-checking, I just want to say I really love this argument because it gets down to that idea of what makes a director. You know, is it having a vision that is different from everyone else? Is it having a wealth of a filmography, being super prolific, or is it having a consistency within the filmography? And I think all three choices have been hugely influential. We can see touches of Lynch in movies, you see touches of Kurosawa, particularly as you say with Rashomon, and we can see touches, of course, with Kubrick, that things are Kubrickian, as they say, like Hitchcockian, you know. So a really good argument. And now I want to hear from the fact checkers and Twitter.
All right, so just counting because the number of films was brought up, I counted that there were 31 films from Akira Kurosawa in the collection.
Even better.
Lynch has 3 and Kubrick has 5. Jonathan brought up that, you know, countless films of Kubrick's have been banned. It's usually like the same films over and over again, particularly Clockwork Orange. The Shining has been banned. Full Metal Jacket has been banned. All of those were banned in South Africa. The Red Badge of Courage was banned in France for various reasons. So yeah, there's lots of, or at least that's what I read online. Maybe I'm getting the name of the movie wrong, but it might have been another Kubrick movie, something else, or maybe it was Paths of Glory. Fact checking is hard, guys. Either way, tons of his stuff has been banned, especially the Clockwork Orange, so many times because, you know, Clockwork Orange controversial.
Little of the ultra violence. As I mentioned, Jonathan Peck brought up some stuff about Armageddon. He also found that The Rock is in there. So not only is Michael Bay in the Criterion Collection, he has films.
Well, at least Armageddon is debatable, but The Rock, I think, is a good one. And you can see behind me, I've got Clockwork Orange poster right behind me. Ooh. It's one of my favorite films. So I thought that you all made such strong points for each of your directors, and they are very different from each other. So I want to go to Sam. What are your thoughts, Sam?
I was basically just posting gifs of Terry Gilliam the whole time.
Trying to support your choice.
Well, you want to talk about good directors. You talk about a director who had to deal with one of his main stars dying for one of his movies. He had a movie where the set washed away, so that turned into a documentary instead, and now he's come back to it with his latest movie.
Yeah.
Why didn't I name it Terry Gilliam?
Gilliam's a great choice. Jack, what do you think about these arguments?
Oh, well, I mean, this is really well fought. What's funny is, you know, we give everybody a choice and then we tell them to pick two. And in this particular situation, we only have 3 directors to choose from. One of the directors appeared in every single person's choices, either first or second. So these are what are considered for these guys the best of the best. I really loved the David Lynch argument of his uniqueness and what he does, that he's not really someone you can go, oh, that's really Lynchian. It's not something you normally say because his style and his manner is very unique. But I will say that Garrett's argument of him being a better writer than the director did sort of stick with me, because I do feel that he's a very gifted writer, and I think that if he didn't write as well as he did, his movies wouldn't be as great as they are. So I'm torn. So that was a rebuttal that really kind of stuck with me. I was kind of this is really tough. I'm glad I'm not judging. I'm torn. I'm really torn. I thought all the arguments were good. I mean, Kurosawa and Kubrick have been around for a really long time. They're very well known, and I like Jonathan's arguments about Kurosawa. I think that those were valid points that I wasn't actually aware of, and I think Kubrick's library is up and down, but Kubrick also has a very big library to choose from as well. I don't know. I'm going to leave it to you on this one. I'm getting out of this one.
Yeah, it is really hard because, you know, I think that saying a director is influential shouldn't count against them because they were, you know, the first to do that thing that was then copied over and over again. I liked the fact that Jonathan pointed out that Kubrick really did push boundaries and envelopes, and he did a whole range of genres: sci-fi films, political films, war films, and then Lynch, as you say, he is still working. He does his own thing. He doesn't play by the rules at all. He has a unique perspective. I think he's both a great writer and a director, and even his films that people consider not the best, I find just fascinating. You know, his kind of movies that you watch and you just want to figure out what it all means. And then
Garrett did say something real quick too. He also said that, like, oh, we're still seeing what Lynch is doing because he's still working. Yeah, but Lynch has a 25+ year filmography, so I still think he's well deserved to be in the conversation.
you can still look at his legacy, even though it is continuing, because he has a body of work that is so varied. And then Garrett, I love the way he talked about Akira, you know, in terms of Rashomon, about how he did pioneer a lot of story structure, and then stylistically he had his own thing as well, that and that he was so prolific, and 31 films in the Criterion Collection?
I thought it was 27.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, I'm very, very, very torn. This is not an easy choice, but I have to make a choice. So I'm going to go with Kimber and David Lynch.
Wow.
Because I really like the way you pointed towards his unique perspective. So Kimber,
that's amazing.
2 points.
Congratulations, Kimber. So here's what that means, guys. We have a tie. Now, normally when you get a tie, we have to break it, and we're going to break it in just a second. However, the top 2 scores would move forward to next week. That means Kimber and Jonathan, you are definitely returning next week to face a very special guest. Jessie Malton will be here, and she might be bringing a friend. So you guys will be returning next week for a very special battle. Congratulations. However, Garrett actually gave up a spot last week to play in this week to help us out. So I wanted you to know I would like you to still come and be a part of that show. So definitely join us next week.
Yeah,
you're definitely involved. We really appreciate all of your contributions to this show specifically as well. And you did a great job today. So quick hand here for Garrett.
So good. Honestly, it was like it's so hard to split between you 3, and I think you 3 could give any of us on Movie Fights a run for our money anytime. Honestly, you're such great arguers. So congrats to all of you for sure.
So real quick, let's break a tie because we have to have a winner on our show. So real quick, Alicia, Holiday Brouhaha or Monster Mash, which one do you like more?
Holiday Brouhaha.
Holiday Brouhaha it is. What movie is must watch during the Christmas holiday season? This is just for the Jonathan and Kimber.
Gremlins.
Nice. Of course you pick Gremlins. That's awesome.
Let's go with Home Alone.
You all lose. It's Christmas Vacation. How could you?
Absolutely.
All right, Kimber, we're going to do
Die Hard.
Oh, Die Hard counts too, actually. Okay, so let's get right into it. Kimber, Gremlins, whenever you're ready, 20 seconds.
Yeah, Gremlins is ultimate fun, man. Like, if you just want to, like, sit around and watch an unconventional Christmas movie that is absolutely still a Christmas movie, then, you know, make up some popcorn and start watching Gremlins and have the best time ever. Puppets, amazing. You got just excitement and fun the whole time. How can you not be entertained by all these little creatures and the little adventure?
Jonathan, Home Alone.
To me, the holiday season is all about family, and no movie encapsulates the dysfunctionality and the fun and the beauty and the love that surrounds family to me, and the weird ways that we will go to try to find each other, like Home Alone. I love how universally lovable it is. It's a movie that I can watch with my 8-year-old cousins. It's a movie I can watch with my 80-year-old grandparents. It's a movie that all of us will sit and laugh.
Time, Kimber.
Yeah, you can absolutely watch Gremlins with the whole family too. And if you're talking about like bringing people together and the things people do for Christmas, this guy like bought a Mogwai for his kid, and it all starts from there. So crazy things happen when you try to do fun things for your family for Christmas.
Time, Jonathan.
But most importantly, amongst the chaos of Home Alone, the importance is the message of love and the message of acceptance that comes through that movie that symbolizes to me what makes Christmas the way it is. It's more than just a crazy story. It's actually a movie with a tremendous...
Time. All right, Alicia.
All right.
Pick us the winner.
Yeah, but both really good choices. Both that I watch every Christmas, as well as Love Actually. I really do.
Second choice.
Second one, romantic.
Even though people hate on it with good reason, but I still
it is my
love
favorite
it.
Christmas movie.
Oh my gosh, yeah, me too. But as far as the arguments are concerned, I am going to go with Jonathan because I like the way you said that it's about dysfunctional families and it has a message of love and acceptance. And nobody mentioned the sticky bandits and how dropping things on their heads actually is quite violent, but it's a sweet movie. So Jonathan wins the game.
Congratulations, sir.
My losing streak is broken.
Well done, sir. Winning the Lynch one threw me off, actually. I was totally not expecting to get the Lynch points.
That was fantastic. I think, guys, this was a great fight. Thank you so much for everybody for being here. Alicia, we want to start with you. You have so many great things to tell the people about. Can you please tell us where we can find you, what you have going on, everything, please?
Yeah, lots going on as always, but you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Alicia Malone. I'm also on YouTube. Movies are my jam. And then you can follow my new little Facebook group called We Rally, which is all about bringing men and women together in order to support women in the digital media space. Thank you guys for having me. This was so much fun. And, you know, nothing else I'd rather do at 8 a.m. in the morning on Sunday morning. It's great. That was really fun.
We are very appreciative and grateful of you giving up some of your time this morning. Thank you so much. We're sorry that the show is so early in the day. There's just so much going on during the week. So let's hit our checker chair real quick. Ashton Joe, tell us where we can find you.
Well, you can find us here on the TUFF channel, fact-checking for fan fiction. You can also find us later tonight at 7 Eastern.
Yeah, 7 Eastern.
6 Central, 4 Pacific, for BFF, where we're going to be talking about Citizen Kane. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at Drake Masters.
And I'm at _Mrs. Davis.
Or you can follow our communal account, Geek to My Nerd, with underscores with everything. And if we're the ones you guys are seeing on the screen right now, you can see all of our Twitters here on this handy little bar. I think that's everything.
Yeah, I also do writing for Screen Mayhem, which is digital media site where we review movies and Netflix and do top 5s and all sorts of stuff. And I should be having a Stranger Things related top 5 coming out soon about other nostalgia binges you can take now that Stranger Things is over and you're sad and you want to watch something maybe a little different than, you know, your 8th viewing of Stranger Things season 2. You know, just differentiate it.
All hail King Steve.
And she did ask me to mention Screen Mayhem. I apologize for doing that. Screen Mayhem. Garrett McDowell, where are we find you, buddy?
You can find me at Garrett McDowell1 on Twitter. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel where I have a video with Alicia Malone. We talked about The Beguiled. I also have a lot of other movie reviews and stuff where I talk about movies, most recent ones that have come out. And if you do subscribe to that, I will have a review for The Killing of the Sacred Deer. Probably record it right after this. Thank you guys so much for having me on here. I am looking forward to extending my losing streak even more because I'm 1-3 now. Let's make it 1-10. Who knows? But again, I always have so much fun on here. I love arguing about movies. So thanks, guys.
And Garrett, thank you again. You do, like I said, you do all of our title cards. We really appreciate it. You've been helping us since the very beginning with that. So thank you again for.
Yeah, and he does my thumbnails too on my YouTube. So thank you, Garrett.
If anybody needs thumbnails made, just send me a tweet.
You're great.
That's all right, you know?
I'll have one for 2 weeks later today.
Awesome, thank you.
Kimber, Champ, tell us about where we can find you.
Sure. In a couple hours here, actually, I'm going to be going on Cars and Popcorn with Tom Zambino. He does a show about cars and film, and we're going to be doing the Muppet movie and talking about Fozzie Studebaker. So please check us out there. And week Odd Shaped Panel, which is our pop culture call-in show where we talk to you guys. You can check us out on Odd Shaped Channel, and my Twitter handle is at @KimberBatch_OSP.
Thank you so much again, Champion, for being here and fighting, and we can't wait to see you next week. It's going to be a great show. Before I get to today's winner, let's talk to Sam real quick. Thank you for being up at whatever it is, 2, 3 in the morning at this point and join us. Yeah, 4:30. Sam has fought at that time because he's a brave soul and he's won. Sam, just tell everybody where we can find you, buddy.
Well, in about 5 minutes, you're going to find me in bed.
We personally...
Normally on this show you'd already find me in bed, but because my mother's asleep and I'm further away today, I'm on the lounge. But yeah, normally you'd find me in bed on this show. But
where are we finding you on Twitter? What's your Twitter handle?
At Sis Mary Elephant.
Thanks again for being with us and being our resident Aussie fan. Finally, Jonathan, it's time to tell everybody where we can find you, man.
Well, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at youngblood_95. I'd point down there, but I can't get the stupid thing to work. I don't know, Nolan, Dean, and I, fan of the show, have a big project we have starting in January that I'm super psyched to tell you all about more. And just keep tuning in to everything that these amazing people keep putting out. Thank you, Alicia. It's been a dream to interact with you and to meet you, so I'm glad that I actually got to do it. And I'm super pumped for this next fight. So yeah, thanks, Jack. This has been great.
Thanks, dude. I really appreciate it. And I have your information in the description below. So if you want to tweet at Jonathan, you can do so there. And guys, I'm Jack Shipley, JRS Pitboy 2008. We're also the TUFF channel on Twitter. Thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Alicia Malone, thank you again for being here. We really appreciate it. Guys, we'll see you in 2.